Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started here. My name is Quinn Carver Johnson. I'm thrilled to welcome you all to our second installment of the People's Poetry Reading. Today we're joined by Markham Johnson, Eder McKnight, and we have not heard from Written Quincy today. If he wanders in, we're going to give him some stage time. If not, I've got a few poems prepared for y'all that I'll read in the interim. Before we get started, I'd like to take this time to acknowledge that the land where we gather today is the home of the Cherokee, Muskogee Creek, and Osage nations, as well as the ancestral home of the Caddo and numerous other tribes before the forced removal. We are also standing on ground that was once part of the Greenwood District. We recognize this history and pay our respects to those who call this land home. I'd also like to thank Chloe and Ethan for their help making this event possible, our poets for sharing their work with you today, and all of you for joining us here in this theater. The last time we were gathered here, I read a poem that Woody Guthrie had written. Today, I'd like to share some of Woody's writing about the nature and purpose of poetry. I think it's important to begin each of these events with Woody's own words. His work spoke to the strife of people, to their joys, their struggles, their victories and defeats, what the novelist Tyree Jones calls people with problems, not problems with people. As you all likely know, during World War II, the US government put stickers on their bombs that said, "This machine kills fascists." Perhaps the most famous thing Woody Guthrie ever did was slap one of those stickers on his guitar, "This machine kills fascists." But this wasn't an empty message. It wasn't a toothless, self-congratulating statement about the power of the artist. It was a mission, a purpose. Woody Guthrie firmly believed that the purpose of his art and the purpose of all art should be to people, the people of the world struggling against oppression, to ease their suffering, to empower them in their fight for freedom, to rally allies to fight alongside them, to truly support and enact their liberation. Woody Guthrie believed in the power of this righteous, liberating art, but he also held art to this standard, demanded art to fight for the will of the people. This is clear in the following letter that Woody wrote to his mother-in-law during World War II. This letter is something like 80 years old today, but the message, the urgency of Woody's call to action remains as true as ever. Woody Guthrie writes, "All art, and all industry, and all work, and all play, in these days should point to the defeat of fascists the world over. Naturally, this includes poetry and singing. The main job is to describe the enemy. What is fascism? What is freedom, liberty, democracy, the true, the brave, the free? All of these are empty words unless they are taken apart and defined in terms of the war against fascism and Nazism and any other kind of slavery. Words change their meaning when new situations come along. All the words are good for then is to expose, tear apart, throw light on the enemy, because no army, without the very highest morale it can muster, has any real business walking out in front of Hitler's war. And the very best fighting morale, pep, enthusiasm, and power that can be put into any army of freedom and democracy is to tell them in all of our works what Hitlerism is, how it came to be, who brought it about, where it first arose, and in what forms it is to be found in Europe, in China, Asia, Russia, or right here in our own United States. And the same as Nazi slavery must be shown up for the hideous, bloody, murderous evil that it is, so must democracy, unity, freedom, equality, and the whole Allied philosophy be spread and instilled 1,000 times in the mind of every thinking human being that lives in these days of the common people's war against fascist slavery. Art is a weapon, and as deadly as steel cannons or exploding bombs. Art should not be pacifist, nor mystic, but should send fighting people to the field of battle filled with clear knowledge of what the real enemy is, and what the people of the world are fighting toward. art that simply causes soldiers to trot blindly out onto a battlefield without the least historic understanding in terms of the past, present, and future of the whole human race is far from being useful art. It is actually national morale for the fascist enemy. 3 enlightened soldiers with the right understanding of these things are worth more than 300 who are only fighting because it is better than loafing, or because somebody told them to go and fight. So you see, it is the job of poets to entangle all of the knots, wipe away all of the clouds and fog that have been hiding all of these inner meanings. What is the enemy fighting for? Surely he believes in his fight. It is the job of all artists, painters, dancers, writers, singers, sculptors, musicians, critics, actors, everybody, everywhere, to join hands with the war workers and work harder to root out, expose, and kill out the fascist enemy everywhere, at home and abroad. Words must be turned against the Nazis like red-hot machine gun bullets and 500-pound bombs, blowing their factories and munition dumps into 10 million pieces. Unless words do this job, they are useless. Nazis smile and keep crashing ahead. Words that expose Hitler's axis for what it is are words of truth. Words that are deadlier to our enemy than all of the pretty, empty rhyming in the world. Our event pulls its name from People's Song, a political organization made up by Pete Seeger, Josh White, Woody Guthrie, and many others, with the aims of disseminating union and labor songs to the people. Our mission is similar, to tell stories of people through poetry. The Woody Guthrie Center hasn't placed any restrictions on what our poets will read or say today. It's our hope that you'll listen to their messages with an open mind. We hope you'll be asked to think differently, and that you'll find yourself in these poems. Right outside the theater after the show, we'll have a merch table up where you can buy books from Markham Johnson. I encourage you to speak to the rest of our poets, see how you can support their work. Before Markham comes up to read, I am going to read a few poems that I've written myself. These all come from a collection of poetry that I wrote in college about the intersection of queer identity and professional wrestling. I've joked before that I think I'm the first person to ever talk about professional wrestling on this stage. And these poems come from that project. This first one is called Before It Sets In. When I was 6, maybe, one of the older boys in the neighborhood slipped a tree branch in between the spokes of my bike and sent me careening into loose gravel. Someone else might tell you this was the moment they learned that they could tolerate pain. Not me. I cried the whole dizzy ride home. I'm not sure I ever had that moment. I'm not sure anyone has. I spend most evenings now sweating over the fight to come and the whole night after pulsing in agony. Only those few untethered moments in the ring are free of worry. When I buzz like static, my muscles on autopilot, slap the mat to rile up the crowd and launch myself over the top rope with a life-risking tackle. The fight spilling out into the arena, but that's a different story. No, the lesson came from my mother, a trinket of wisdom passed through a lineage of resourceful women, from mother to daughter to granddaughter, to rest finally in the hands of this bastard child. Your own saliva can pull a blood stain from fabric. I sat crying in the bathroom as my mother made me spit and spit into my splattered shirt. I can't do it, she said. It has to come from you. As my mother dabbed stinging alcohol into splotches and smears, scrapes tearing down my cheek. Quick, before it sets in. Then it's too late. Slowly, the small, dark something that had blotted the fabric began to fade, the magic, to make the evidence of pain disappear, to transform the body using only the body, to negate and replenish. Now, after each match, I sit in the damp, barely light of makeshift locker rooms and spit into my gear, scrubbing from it the night's gruesome history, with each swish of the cheeks, pucker of the lips, scrutiny of the thumb and forefinger, pulling molecules of myself from the weaving. When I'm not alone on the road, I sit shotgun in the harsh beam of the overhead cabin lights and perform this post-match ritual, spit, scrub, driving through the night, and at the crack of a new day, all memory of one town erased just as I reach the next. Of course, it is therapy to wash away what brings us pain. Therapy to start again the next morning, new and clean. Thank you. This next piece is called Cheap Heat Action City. Cheap heat is a professional wrestling term that means an easy, low-hanging comment that would rile up a crowd. An example of that would be if I were to come to the ring and say, "Hey Tulsa, your baseball team sucks," and you guys would all go, "Boo, we hate you." So I wanted to take that concept of this, insignificant kind of poke at an audience, and flip it on its head and ask, what if that critique was real, was grounded in something tangible? So this is Cheap Heat Action City, and the town in question is an amalgamation of my hometown of Arkansas City, Kansas, and my college town of Conway, Arkansas. And in the Midwest, on my drag down Main out for lunch, I count more abandoned buildings than not. And through the dust-tinted storefront window, I guess that the gallery filled with mattresses sold them once. Outside, grizzled men sit on the sidewalk beneath a ripped awning that once shielded summer sun. Next door, a bookstore has moved to a new location. At the new location, a bookstore has closed. Sorry. Outside the family-owned vacuum shop stands Bigfoot in overalls. Some say it's a front for drugs. How many vacuums can you possibly sell, they always say. Bigfoot in the parking lot, come in. Bigfoot in the window, a warning. Don't come asking any questions. On the drive down dirt roads, trailers turn to homes, turn to laboratories, have turned to ashes. On the corner, a church sign. We have 2 bathrooms, Genesis 5:2. On the road into town, billboard, MAGA, vote red. Back alley, behind the 1920s vaudeville theater, teenage graffiti. Love more, please. And in the Midwest, I come spinning, screaming from town to town like a tornado. I can pack the whole county into the seats in the basement gym of the old 2A high school, huddled beneath the hand-sewn banners of titles long since surrendered. In towns where there is little more to do except break what is not yours to break, people cannot take their eyes off the wreckage I leave in my wake. And when I come spiraling through the sky, shattering glass panes and breaking bodies over boards, mothers curtain their hands over their child's eyes, but they peek through fingers like plastic blinds. Dads drink beer to celebrate the wreckage, as if this kind of disaster is nothing out of the ordinary. And you can read about it in the local paper tomorrow, an opinion column, a concerned parent. What will this do to her 2 young boys? To see this type of pain, this violence, where they call home. Thank you. And finally, I wanted to read a poem called Ode to the Pink Cowboy Hat. And it's about the band Boys Don't Cry and the professional wrestler Cowboy Bob Orton. Ode to the Pink Cowboy Hat. And in the summer of 1986, I Want to Be a Cowboy was number 12 on the charts. And the music video featured a man, a best of the bad type, buck naked except his hat, smoking a blunt in the bath, and MTV hated the video. They said it wasn't rock and roll, but it was a smash hit, so they had no choice. And that's how it found me 2 decades later, a child discovering the last remnants of VHS tapes in their room, as the cartoon thought bubble begins to expand, learning that a fantasy looks like a naked cowboy in his bathtub. And that was the summer of 2006, but in the summer of 1986, Boys Don't Cry released their only major hit song. And during that summer, and that summer only, Bob Orton wore a pink hat when he came to the ring, alongside the Adorable One, or when visiting Adrian Adonis in the flower shop, when bludgeoning his own old friend Roddy Piper in the ring. And it's telling that Lemmy Kilmister plays a spaghetti western cowboy in the music video for I Want to Be a Cowboy. And I watched those old westerns in the box of VHS tapes, and it's telling that in those films, the hero wears a white hat, rides into town on a white stallion to gun down the villain beneath the midnight brim. And I don't need to tell you what it means that Cowboy Bob Orton came to the ring in a pink hat, paired with Adonis's lace and eyeshadow, and I don't need to tell you who the villain of the story was, or who was gunned down when Roddy Piper decided that a town wasn't big enough for 2 men. But what I need to tell you is that I can make a town or a home big enough for 2 men. All it takes is a small garden in the windowsill. Here, take this spade. Gather me a handful of soil from the park, and I could plant seeds in the ground, beg rain from the clouds, turn Piper's pit into the flower shop. I would tug at lavender leaves and draw you a bath, roll the herb tight and add mint to your tea. If you're going to be a cowboy, then I want to be a cowboy too. And I want to wear the pink hat. Thank you. And as we return to our regularly scheduled programming, our first poet this afternoon is Markham Johnson. Markham Johnson won the Pablo Neruda Prize from Nimrod in his most recent book, Dear Dreamland, which will be available outside of the theater after this, was published in June by Lamar University Press. His first book, Collecting the Light, was a University Press of Florida contemporary poetry series publication. And a chapbook, Starlings, Grackles, Red Wings, was selected by Philip Levine for the South Florida Poetry Review. Please welcome Markham Johnson.
Thank you, Grant. 50 years ago, Tulsa, the United States Supreme Court ordered Tulsa to integrate their schools. So I became one of the first 7 white students to graduate from Booker T. Washington High School. And in addition to being in school there, I also played tennis on the tennis team. And we actually, my doubles partner and I were actually really good because I had a very good serve, and he was an all-state linebacker. And so when that return would wobble back over the net, he loved to just crush it back and intimidate the opponents. So the first poem is about that. Tennis Whites. Royce hates tennis, but loves to smack pale suburban boys with fuzzy yellow balls. Get away from my net, he mouths. As our opponents rub red welts, he doesn't look back when I laugh, but it's 1972, and I'm the only white kid playing tennis for Booker T. Washington High. Serve, Johnson. He nods, linebacker hands ringing steel racket. At singles we fail, round strokes like purple martins chase mayflies, passing shots playing off posts 1 court over. Even in doubles, Royce and I must win points quickly, losing long rallies to cheat the teams dressed in Izod. My serve is flat and hard, peeling paint from worn cement, so the return wobbles across the net. Yes, Royce grins, while the skinny boy on the other side swears fidelity to the goddess of segregated schools, unsure which body part to protect. He would flee, but his father in the bleachers leans in as my doubles partner raises his racket to invoke centuries of revenge. Royce, I'm still playing on your side. So the second poem is about graduation from that school in 1972. Half a century ago, it's called Booker T. Washington High School Graduation, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Half a century ago, last day of school, a white mob torched Dreamland, Brown's Cafe, Madam C.J. Walker's beauty parlor, and every church in Greenwood. At Booker T. Washington, prom banners flapping like busted wings, they turned away. Tonight, in this theater where some say Tulsa race massacre dead were fed to basement boiler flames, I am one of 7 first white graduates, one of 257 gowned in black. Tonight my friends and I are little more human than clay. Even Royce Carter, quoting Malcolm X, I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who for. He's searching the crowd for Moses. His father, as a child, cloaked in cattails, was saved from torch-lit KKK. When I turn to look where Royce waves, I see Grandpa Jake rise from his chair in the back row, angry. He wants to leave. Years before, as I waited in line for baseball autographs, Grandpa raised me to those Derrick Man shoulders so I could reach Satchel Paige. Later, gowned in white, he blazed in the light of 2 crucified railroad ties on a hill over Greenwood. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, Royce chants, as Grandpa paces the aisle, bumping folding chairs, the way he drives, flanks of his roadmaster pocked with small tragedies. Is that walnut-sized tumor already crowding his brain? Does his world catch and turn over like the Buick's bulky starter? Let's say I remember how he held me tiny in those broken driller's mitts. Let's say I still love, though I can't forgive. Let's say I hear his voice going blind. When I was about 14, my grandmother told me a story. The story she told me was that when in 1921 she had been a student at Central High School in Tulsa, where it used to be downtown where the PSO building is now. And early one morning, she looked down from her classroom window and she saw a wagon load of dead bodies being hauled away from Greenwood, which was burning, to what would have been at the end of Cincinnati Avenue, must have been Oakland Cemetery, to what would have been a mass grave that has still never been found. It was one of those poems, one of those stories that you know you need to write about. But for me, it was something, it took me a long time to finally do that, to finally write that poem. And this poem is really kind of the center of this book. Grandma Ruth, last day of school, 1921. Still 2 hours before first bell, on the final day of school, as the ceiling fan stirs a breeze, so papers on Mr. O'Malley's desk rise and walk the aisle as if they too had someplace better to be. I'm daydreaming of dancing with Jimmy Dolan when I hear the tearing sound
of old metal wheels rolling down Cincinnati Avenue, and an axle that needs grease. Even in 1921, when the trolley carries me home each evening along downtown streets paved for fleets of Ford Roadsters, the clop of horses' hooves is familiar, though part of a world we've all outgrown. Now I see Percherons pounding steel shoes into asphalt that was slicked with tar by midday, pulling a buckboard bearing too much weight on its springs. What's in back, I wonder, stacked under the heavy tarpaulin? Maybe railroad ties or cordwood for the school boiler. On the 1st of June, there's still a chill in the air when the sun's still waiting and I've got the whole school to myself, except for steel engraved poets on the wall. Shelley and Wordsworth peer over my shoulder, and Byron, who do the Texas Tommy all night long. As the wagon creeps underneath the window, a finger of light slides over the Edison Auto Motel, and something sticking out from under the canvas. Shoeless feet, lots of them, some turned up, others down. Mannequins for the windows at Vandiver's, but these are black. And oh Lord, now I smell smoke and wonder if the school's on fire. From this 3rd floor window I see a dark cloud on the far side of the railroad tracks, Little Africa. And later in class I smell ash and kerosene on Mr. O'Malley's hands while he smooths the semester final and whispers, "For you, Ruth," as he leans over my desk. Now students turn to stare as sunlight reveals the death of Dreamland Theater and 1,000 homes rendered in flame. And I remember the buckboard passing Central High and turning at McNulty Field where Babe Ruth clubbed a baseball so far over the right field wall it rolled an extra 100 yards to settle by a gravestone in Oaklawn Cemetery. Now I know where that wagon was found, and by tomorrow, no one will speak of Greenwood again. Okay, something a little different. I taught at Hall and Hall for 24 years and retired. I thought I retired. I was retired for 2 years, but I've gone back this year for one last year. And in all those years, the one writing assignment I always did and always came back to and loved was an assignment where I had my students go and talk to a grandparent and ask that person to tell them a story from when they were teenagers. So my sons did the same process when they were in my class. And my oldest son went and talked to my father and learned a story that I probably would have heard if he hadn't heard this from my father. And this poem is from that story. And it's a story about when my father was 18 and had bought a World War II salvage motorcycle and had run out of gas on the west bank of the Arkansas River. And at the time, the only way back to the side was a train trestle. And my father at the time thought there was this party he had to get to on the east bank, so he decided it was a good idea to walk across the train trestle. Father with railroad trestle, 1947. Smoke, steam really, a gray cartoon bubble blown through oaks over a twilit train that slows to carry the curve where a trestle fords this mud suck of a river. Shallows, sandbars 60 feet below. 1942 Indian chief war salvage motorcycle busted, fuel gauge abandoned in a field of winter wheat. After track practice, gunning the engine with left hand throttle straight up the gravel path to the top of Lookout Mountain, where the whole goddamn city stretched out below. On the far bank, Julie Rutkowski searches the dance floor at Kane's Ballroom as Jack Guthrie sings Okie Boogie half a mile away. When your cycle coughs and dies, there's only one way back to this first love. Halfway across the bridge, the steam locomotive clears the trees, rounds the corner, cow catcher, iron grate V, vacate, valediction, victim, the whistle blast a dirge for all dumb dead things flung over the side. 3 seconds to discover how to survive. For the first time, you know you can die. That bridge shaking with regret as you fling yourself and twist in empty space, catch a single railroad tie, fingers locked as you swing under the 5,000-ton Union Pacific Angel of Death's silvered wheels showering sparks. Boxcars raining soot. Your left leg catches a diagonal brace. When the track's still, I retell this story you first shared 50 years before. Morning surfaces from a dream driven deep as an iron spike, steel on steel moan of brakes that may never catch hold. You wipe a hand across smudged light, sifting between railroad ties, then clamber back into a life worth bearing as a golden eagle, talons locked on something shaken loose from the river rises. Are you listening? Thank you.
J. Williams McKnight. Eder is an educator and a poet residing in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Her time in Tulsa has allowed her to delve into the multiracial history of Oklahoma and produce works featuring Greenwood's Black Wall Street and the Tulsa Race Massacre in collaboration with visual and performance artists. Her poetry has been performed live and featured in local publications, including After 1921, Notes from Tulsa's Black Wall Street and Beyond, edited by artist Crystal Z. Campbell, 2021. She's also featured in the Creative Field Guide to Northeastern Oklahoma anthology, edited by Liz Blood. Eder was a founding member of the Focus Black Oklahoma radio show led by Quraysh Ali Lansana, where she served as the youth segment producer. Eder is author 2 hand-bound art books, but Move Not in 2012 and A Burlap Bloom in 2013 with artist Suzanne Sawyer of Wild Ginseng Studio. Please welcome Eder Williams McKnight.
Thank you, Quinn. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Chloe, for helping with the camera there, and I'm really excited to see all of my friends and fellow poets here. I made a quick change in my schedule, so I'm going to start off reading from this book, After 1921. And I don't have it for the merch table, but you can order it. And it was in collaboration with Crystal Z. Campbell, and I thought, yeah, let's just read all 3 of the poems in it. I had this idea of bringing John Hope Franklin back to life. I was new to Tulsa, and I had fallen in love with the Reconciliation Park and began to learn more and more and more about the story of Greenwood as well as the Race Massacre. And I got inspired to imagine the connection between Black Wall Street here, Wall Street in New York, and all the histories that are kind of entwined around this idea. At that time, we began to get very much more clear about police gunning down Black men. And so that got threaded into this idea. So I just played with this notion, and the first poem is called John Hope Walks. Hands behind back, not in prayer, not in cuffs, John Hope circles his park this fiery afternoon. John Hope holds a brick. This is the brick of that bank and that home and that church, incensed like coals in kiln. Knowledge banked in John Hope's mind confirms the theory of brick and wall, how brick holds elements of earth, heat, time, how mortar is sand, how walls are mutable. John Hope finds a street, looks both ways. At Admiral, the way goes north, at the river, east and west. North is dark country, like Harlem is dark country to those who see a black sky but miss its guiding star. John Hope ascends the great wall of greenwood stacked with fired bricks. He leaps through epochs. New Amsterdam has a wall 12 feet high. The Dutch split their minds and say, I know you. No red, no black, no Brit, no you, then build a wall. North are Lenape, wild hogs, Africans, graves of Africans, their bones arranged in fractals, their skin flaked unto a brushwood wall, which became a road where streetwalkers buy and sell in marbled buildings, trade blood for margins, trade past for futures. John Hope walks the old green streets. There, the grocer, the lawyer, the eagle, Zion, the banker's opulent home. There, a grave of gray bones, femurs, cracked clavicles behind a burned ballpark. The sky smokes, the scent of scorched trees. Black buying and trading closes at the bell. Charred brick and mortar wall the sky. John Hope sees the light. Red, blue, pulse and circle, hands cuffed. Sirens seduce the pop of bullets. Man down, they sing the names first and last, the yearly names chanted in pitch that breaks his brick. John Hope adjusts his glasses. The rubble in his hand holds jewels like red and blue glass formed from the press of time. He pockets them as native seeds. John Hope continues to walk. People appear from points in time. They move through streets like flashing stars. John Hope records their names, spills scarlet and indigo seeds as he moves along. This is the second John Hope, all of these are experiments, by the way. This is the second John Hope poem, and it's called John Hope Notes. 1. We came here from there. Some feet, tucked in leather-crafted shoes, rode in a caravan. Some feet walked until their soles wore out. Everyone had a trail. 2. By serving those with hue, I broaden light in all. 3. 36 smoking blocks choke our throats. The freedom colony raised. Clouds catch the embers, rain them down. Eyes catch the ashes, rain them down. 4. Comb the earth, search every trail for blood. Sift the soil for bone, scrape Frisco's rails for flakes of skin. In night's blanket, gather greenwood's elements, fallen seed, popcorn kernel, darning needle, strands of pressed hair. Like magic, each becomes a proper name. 5. Things from ground grow up, then down, but silence is like wind. Topsoil gusts tornadic heights, bearing bodies charred and dumped. Without this lifting, they would burrow deep into the vault of earth. The next supply of sweet oil, drilled and fracked for world. 6. In the sift of red dirt, I find electric rocks pulsing. I light each with lantern frame. Hurl one to one oak field, one to Reconciliation Way, one to City Hall, one to Lefties, one to Mount Vernon, one to one to one to one to I march on. 7. It is noisy. Rocks keep crying out. I blaze trails. This one gets a bit fantasical. No, that's not the word. It's kind of got some fantasy. Again, it centers on Greenwood. It's called The Bricks of Magic City. It imagines what could be. Greenwood's crystal knocked scatters shards. In the rubble, bricks turn away from the scorching they have set themselves against. Even saliva spewed from the mob steam upon landing. The bricks reimagine themselves, congregated, mortared. Fire is how they have been formed. They need not be burned again. It is summer. 36 blocks still green, heated only by vernal love cooked in jazz. Stained glass windows of Mount Zion depict verse and color. The Stratford preens. Mist rises from mud-stamped roads, grass patches. Maybe it is Thursday when maids become belles again, strolling in freshly ironed dresses. The bricks do not shift. No one knocks them down. What if these 36 blocks could vine their way to Phil Tower, Maple Ridge, the river, Lake Savannah? Could they, like roping kudzu, choke out the Klan, outdo the crash of 29, flourish without class, integrate yet still stand, defy highways that slice the vining? The dirt roads are in on it. They scheme to outwit pavement so water can seep. And the buildings consider their holdings, industries that trade with Ghana, India, Toronto even. They house schools of ascendance. Their people fly. Lightheaded, the buildings know their bricks could scrape the sky. It is summer. In this lot, encamped around a makeshift tent, each brick a fallen soul, scorched by explosives dropped from a plane. They pulse. So this is the first time I'm reading this next set of poems, and it's a different geography, sort of. It's called Rock Steady, and it's in 3 parts. Y'all know Aretha Franklin's Rock Steady? I can't see, so I would sing it, but okay. So we're gonna see how this flows. Thank you for joining me on this journey. As Aretha Franklin, Queen of Soul, was transitioning to the next world, children at the Mexican-U.S. border were being separated from their parents. This policy was called Remain in Mexico, forcing families to make hard choices about sending their children ahead to the U.S. to seek asylum while parents remained in Mexico. To this day, many families have not been reunited, and the past is present. Rock steady. 1. You walk for your children's life, thirsty for a future. It has been a long and winding road, from ancestors who traded turquoise to your run from poisoned towns. All the green has left the grass. The children ride your back, sleep from your sway through sand. Stardust in you lights the way. The moon reveals your company. Butterfly, cicada, vans, bodies. Monsters face you when you arrive. They snatch the children, grab and quarter. Do they take them to feed a god? Does the god revive the earth? Is it Tlaloc, Jehovah, El Chapo, the president? What is it? What is it? 2. How do we rock, Aretha? We are falling. We move our bodies with split minds. The West is burning, the East in floods. Air is viral, water privatized. Teachers hung from invented lies, given erasers to rub out our stories. Lords kick dwellers from their homes to roam, skin stripped from sun and wind. We work till our eyes are blinking screens, find our labor feeding wars in other nations their treasures, garnished, their children gone. How do we rock, Aretha? We are falling. The most precious gift has tumbled, is hunted, gunned in the school, gunned in the mall, gunned at worship, gunned at hospital. How do we rock when we cannot tell which is which, cow in the stockyard or human in a cell, a cricket wall or the crook who built it? Let's call this song exactly what it is, what it is, what it is. We come to party to free the soul. Here we inhale, adjust our eyes, move our hips from side to side, slide to the left, slide to the right. We come to party, but leave to war. 3. When it happened to us, we had no door to hide the child. Our drums were gone, our songs strangled in throats. We could not know which act would stitch us back. We swayed shoulder to shoulder till they knocked numb. Our hearts cut out, our children sold and gone. We stole into the night to circle up and sway. rocked in a ring shout, called forth the ancients, bone of our bone, flesh of our flesh, share the fire, fuse our minds, plan the rescue, move left, right, left, right. They stole your children, they stole ours too. Shoulders lift and fall, children snatched and gone. What is it? Heart of the mothers, what it is. Heart of the fathers, what it is. Soul of the African, what it is. Soul of the native. Bass lines thump, release fission in our bones. Take this funky and low-down feeling. Throw our hands up in the air, place in them what we may. Ride every wind under sun. Find every root and rescue. March left, what it is. Right, what it is, what it is. Rock, steady. Suck it, 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 suck it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eder. Thank you, Mark. Thanks both of y'all for being here today. Thank you all for coming out. We're going to let y'all have the rest of your afternoon back. We are saddened by the absence of Written Quincy, but check out his work on the Fire in Little Africa album. Check out his recent mixtape, Tardy Pass. If you go to our Woody Guthrie Center YouTube channel, you can find the video of last month's reading and hear some of his work there. Before I let y'all go, the last thing I'll say is the deadline to register to vote is October 14th. We've got a table right in our lobby here where you can register right here. Make sure y'all get out and do that. Thank you for coming out and supporting local art, for supporting poetry, and for supporting the Woody Guthrie Center. Thank you all.
This land is your land, and this land is my land, from the California